Hello! Welcome back to Wendy's Lit. It has been a year since the last video. I've been a little busy, but I am still here. I am still queer, and I'm ready to list off my very hopeful TBR for the queer month of June. So let's just get into it. Let's start off with fiction. One of the books I really want to read is The First Sister by Lyndon A. Lewis. From what I remember, I've had this book for a little while, but I have not picked it up because I'm not a huge sci-fi / fantasy person. But that's exactly what this book is, but it is a queer narrative, if you could call it that. It's about a girl who's in this religious / kind of culty group known as the Sisterhood, I believe. And they're all these women, and they're used as kind of like comfort women for men on spaceships. So they're priestesses, and they don't have names, and they cannot speak for themselves. But there's this main character, I believe she is the titled character of the First Sister, who is battling between her faith and her sisterhood, as well as her individuality and literally her freedom. So this one sounds really good. I don't know how I'm gonna start it just because world building just isn't my wheelhouse. It's very hard for me to remember rules and how stuff like works in these kinds of novels. So we'll see how that goes. The next book I want to try and read needs no introduction. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. If you are under a rock and haven't heard of Taylor Jenkins Reid, or let alone The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, you're probably like the leftover 5 people on the planet who haven't heard of it. But it is a very highly regarded piece of literature. It not only has great feminist character representation, but queer representation. So I'm really excited to see how it goes. I think part of me just avoided reading it because of the hype. But it's weird because I'm super easy to please, so it's not like I have high hopes and expectations for this novel. I know very well that I'm going to love it. I just feel like because of all the hype around it, it's gonna overwhelm me. It's gonna break my heart. I've had some fellow reader friends who love this novel to death, and they're not criers in books, and they say they were openly sobbing by the end of the novel. So I really want to read it, but at the same time, I feel like, am I in the right headspace for it, you know? But yes, from what I understand, it is about a classic film Hollywood actress, think like Mae West or Lauren Bacall, that's what I think anyway, who is finally retiring. She's kind of like in her 60s, I believe, and she is very reclusive. She doesn't really tell anybody about her life, and she finally decides to give an interview to a very specific journalist. So the story is just about, obviously, her 7 husbands, but also her life as an actress and maybe a little bit of her struggles as well. I'm really excited about it. I know it's gonna break me, but that's what Pride Month is all about, right? My next book choice is going to be a toss-up. Every month I try to read an easy, soft rom-com. They all tend to have a stereotypical look to them. I think you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. But I like these because they're easy and fun to read, and they don't really need a lot of depth to them. They're just enjoyable lit. A beach read, if you will. And for this month, I'd like to read a queer one. So it's a toss-up between She Drives Me Crazy by Kelly Quinlan and Delilah Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. She Drives Me Crazy follows Scotty, a female basketball star who's got a really toxic ex, and her rival Irene, and of course there's a fake dating situation going on, and Scotty is unfortunately in very close circumstances with her rival Irene. The fake dating scenario is something I'm interested in, but I also just love sports and female queerness in literature. I think it's not something that's very explored, so that sounds very fun to me. Delilah Green Doesn't Care follows Delilah, an up-and-coming New York City photographer who's basically guilt-tripped by her sister to come back to their godforsaken hometown and photograph her wedding. Going back to her hometown brings a lot of awful feelings for Delilah, but one of her sister's friends is kind of making the trip worthwhile. I love both of these tropes, the whole like toxic ex and fake dating scenario, as well as the city girl coming back to her awful hometown and falling in love. We'll see which one of these breaks the tiebreaker. Now for the nonfiction pick of the month. I've been trying to read at least one nonfiction a month, and it's been working out for me. I actually really love essays, especially personal ones. Memoirs are one of my favorite things to read, so a personal essay collection is just kind of right up my alley. But I have yet to read anything by Audre Lorde, which is a sin in the queer reading community. Sister Outsider is regarded as one of her best pieces and is thought to have some of her most iconic prose. I love, love, love Audre Lorde's poetry. I've read sections of it and pieces of it in poetry, especially Black poetry collections. So to read it in her own actual piece sounds really exciting to me. So I'm told the collection is really an every woman collection. It really focuses on not just the feminist voice, but the Black voice, the lesbian voice, the woman voice. I am very excited to pick this up. A more recent print that I've been looking into is We Have Always Been Here by Samra Habib, a Muslim memoir. I have very rarely read Muslim memoirs. I very rarely read Muslim perspectives, especially not queer ones. So I think reading this would really broaden a lot of my horizons. This is about Habib's own struggles and life journey and growing up Muslim in a conservative and extremely religious country. She really kind of battles this identity crisis of her faith as well as her sexuality. I think it starts off her living in her Muslim country and then going into her new home in Canada, but still facing a lot of racism as well as sexism and homophobia when she moves. So I'm really excited to read this too. I, again, don't really read from the Muslim perspective, so I think this would be a really good read. On to the manga I want to pick up this month. I really would like to read Boys Run the Riot. I have heard that it is great trans representation and it is own voices. The author Keito Gaku is trans also, so to note that a manga is own voices, unheard of. Basically, it's about a trans boy who is coming to terms with his identity and his sexuality. He only ever feels comfortable when he dresses as a boy. But in a conservative country and with so many friends and family that don't know, it's becoming harder and harder to suppress that side of him and explain himself or dodge questions about his identity. Another good choice if you're looking for a trans manga. My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness is another popular read in the booktube community. I know that many manga tends to follow women in high school or, if anything, 20 to 23. So it's usually out of my age group, but My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness follows a 28-year-old female. So she's kind of my age, and so it'll be nice and refreshing to read from someone who's actually going through what I'm going through and kind of figuring themselves out. I'm told it's really deadpan humor, but it's also really great in terms of figuring out your female identity and your sexual identity. Also, it's part of a series. I think she has multiple, and then like a spin-off as well. So I'm hooked already. So, and not a lot of lesbian manga out there. So pick this up. I hear The Sunspot is super hot on Book Talk right now. I know very little about it except that it's about a boy named Kohei who has a hearing disability and he's really outcasted because of it. So he distances himself and is kind of a loner until a new boy comes into town and is this great big ball of sunshine and just won't leave Kohei alone. I'm told that it is beautifully written and also beautifully drawn. I've seen a couple of the cover pages. The scenery, the landscapes are gorgeous. Another good read, queer representation and disability representation. Lots of boxes being checked. And that's all for my TBR. I would love to read all of these, but realistically, I'm gonna read about one or two of them and then go by my mood reading. I think what's so great about TBRs is that you don't have to strictly subscribe to that list. You're welcome to read any book on that list, and you're also welcome to read none of the books on that list at all. For example, I just finished Tony Kushner's Angels in America. Incredible, absolutely incredible. I listened to it on audiobook, so if you are a Scribd listener, Audible, if you have Libby for your library, please check it out. It is a great story, a gay fantasia as it is subtitled. Very, very beautiful. But I also just started reading Arsenic and Adobo, a Filipino mystery crime thriller thing. You don't really have to stick to just gay reads during Pride or Asian books during AAPI month. I think it's more just a suggestion to broaden your horizons and remember that there are more than just straight white male protagonists out there. Let's hope I'm more consistent this time around. School is out and I am working a little bit less, but we'll see. Up until the next one, happy Pride and happy reading!